Okay, it is 3 p.m. CET time, and when our speakers join and appear, we are ready to start. We will give all the latecomers one more minute, but as I will be starting with an introduction, I believe it is not a problem to actually start with the least important and then going to the practical debate. So, hello everyone and welcome to the Afternoons Beyond Borders, as we call the series of the practical debates. Reliable advisors and practical advisors who will be guiding you through your legal and tax and other matters. International has originated in 2017, and I'm also the founder of a platform called Anywhere Legal, which helps you with your cross-border and multinational legal and tax matters. And it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome here on this debate our esteemed guests and great advisors from all around the world, starting as the etiquette provides with my dear and great colleague Barbara Dlabulova, a junior associate from Eros Law Firm from Prague, Czech Republic, who very surprisingly will be speaking about setting up of a bank account in Oman. She's unfortunately for her not in Oman right now. She's sitting in the next room here in Prague, but she has a real and very recent experience with helping a Czech company setting up an entity and then bank account in Oman. And I think it's very valuable experience that she wants to share with you, with our guests. Also with us here is our colleague Ahmad Al-Khalil from, Crimson Legal is the law firm. I don't actually know exactly where you are, Ahmad, right now, but you can definitely tell us later on. And Ahmad will be speaking about the Emirates, UAE, and giving a little bit of distinction between the Emirates mainland and the like various Emirates or mainly Dubai as such. And I'm also pleased and glad that my friend and colleague Ricardo Benussi is here with us today, who will be speaking mainly about the Asian markets, I would say, but mainly Singapore. So, lady and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here with us, with me today. And I'm looking forward so much for having a practical discussion on the issues of setting up of bank accounts. We will start with Barbara, then we will go to Ahmad, and then to Ricardo. So, Barbara, I'm gladly giving you the word, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Wojciech, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, let me just thank you, Wojciech, for organizing this event and for giving me the opportunity to speak here about my recent experience with opening a bank account in Oman. So as Wojciech said, my name is Barbara Dlabulova, and I'm a junior associate at Eros Law Firm in Prague, Czech Republic. I'm a member of our international team, which help the clients with their legal matters abroad or with their legal matters with some international element. As Wojciech mentioned, I'm going to share with you the experience with my experience with opening the bank account in Oman, which might seem a little bit strange that the Czech lawyer is going to be speaking about opening a bank account in Oman. However, I got the opportunity to assist one of our clients with establishment of a company in Oman. And therefore, via the platform Anywhere Legal, we got in touch with our partner law firm in Oman, and together we have helped the client with this project from the beginning to the very end. The project involves not only establishment of the company itself, but also arrangement of the registered seat of the company and mainly opening a local bank account there. Firstly, I will begin with me personally, I find it as the most important part of the process of opening the bank account in Oman. And it's the relevant documentation that needs to be provided to the bank. The purpose is not to, not to give you the detailed information which the forms and the documents contain. However, just to, so you can get a better picture of the information that the bank needs and which you will be required to share with the bank. So the bank can get a better picture of your business, a better picture of you as the person who will have the bank account at their bank, etc., etc. The process itself is not, really complicated, but the KYC process of the bank is key, and therefore the documentation that will be provided to the bank are very, very important. As I mentioned, we help the client, to establish a company and then open the bank account. Therefore, the documents that I will be talking about now were provided to us or to the client as the company. Therefore, if one is a physical person that will be opening the bank account there, it is possible that the forms and the documents will vary. However, the content and the core of the documentation and the information still should remain the same. And also it will depend on the bank where you decide to open the bank account. But as I said, the core information and the basic stuff that you will share with the bank remains. So the basic form, the most important form is the account opening application form, where you provide the bank with your identification details. You will specify the currency that you want to have the bank account in. You will provide the bank with some estimation of the turnover, and also provide identification of the persons who will have the access to the bank account and have the authorization rights. Then there's a FATCA status declaration form. It's spelled as FATCA. That's a form where you confirm whether or not you are an US entity or a foreign financial institution. For these persons, the bank has stricter process, and therefore you need to confirm first if you are such a person or not, and that will depend on the next steps. The other form that needs to be submitted is a tax residency self-certification form, which only provide the bank with the information on the jurisdiction of your tax residence. Then there's a self-declaration for politically exposed person. So as the name of the document says, this is the document where you provide information whether or not you are a politically exposed person, which of course would imply some complication within the process. Then there's an international sanctions questionnaire, which basically gives an overview to the bank whether or not your business and your business relations are connected to some of the sanctioned countries or individuals. And the last is the beneficial ownership certification form, which provides the bank with the information on the owners, the real or ultimate, owners of the company. What's also very important and what actually caused a little trouble within the process of our client is that the bank needs certified copy of passport. This copy needs to be notarized and then apostilled in case you will be submitting the copy remotely. So I'm gonna get into the details more further in the discussion, but that needs to be borne in mind that the notarized copy of the passport needs to be provided to the bank. The documents that I mentioned then needs to be signed by the authorized person. That means the director of the company or the physical person who's opening the bank account. And in case of the company, it also needs to be stamped, which was kind of a surprise for us when we found out, because the client and the new company needs to arrange a stamp with the name of the company and the identification number in Arabic also, and also in English. This, as I said at the beginning, this is the key part of the process, to provide the bank with proper information of the entity. So the bank, can make the KYC process more smoothly and faster. So the more detailed information are provided to the bank, the more fast is the process. So this is for me at the beginning. We will definitely get into more details about the process and more practical aspects further the discussion. But for now, that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bara. That was excellent. And just for you who are watching today, don't worry. We will definitely process all the content of today's call into an article where you will be able to read these details and use them as a base for your potential future actions. And of course, you can also turn to our advisors to provide you with their experienced help. Now we will go to Ahmad. Ahmad, I will ask you also to provide a short intro about you and also about the topic that you are able to speak about. So giving you the word, and thank you.
Hi. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ahmad Khalil. I'm a partner at Crimson Legal based out of Abu Dhabi, but we service all our clients around the United Arab Emirates, particularly in Dubai. The focus has been on that area in recent times. Just wanted to say thank you for having me and for hosting us and asking these questions, because we, as a law firm, get questioned quite often about setting up bank accounts, whether it's the personal or the corporate ones. Just a quick thing. I mean, to Bada's point, the documentation is almost the same between most of the regions. The only difference we have here, or the distinction, is that we have two types of kind of companies. You've got mainland companies, which are considered within the jurisdiction of the United Arab Emirates, and you've got free zones. I think the UAE now has about 62 different free zones, each one specializing in maritime, in shipping, in insurance, so on and so forth. So it really depends. The difference I wanted to mention is that some of the times we face that when you have a free zone entity, the bank opening process becomes a little more cumbersome. So they ask for a little more documentation. The process takes a little bit longer, and it depends on which free zone you're dealing with. So the bigger free zones available in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, and some of the other Emirates would be a little quicker. But for the smaller free zones, the lesser known ones, they tend to take a little bit longer in time. And I'll go into those in more detail later on. For mainland entities, they are considered fairly quicker. The process still remains the same. The documentation is the same, similar to what Bara mentioned, the FATCA documents, the attested documents, and all of those. So there's not really much of a distinction between the UAE and Oman on that side. And I'm pretty sure most banking facilities will require, the institutions will require pretty much the same thing. So I'll leave it for the more in-depth discussion to talk about the timings, the setup, and other documentation as well.
Amazing. But for me, as a person, not that well acquainted with the differences between the free zones and the mainland, can you maybe say a little bit more what it is actually about? Because not everyone has to understand.
So, okay, originally the way the setup of the UAE was that you can only create companies within mainland jurisdiction, meaning that you are dealing with the mainland companies. Back in the day, up until recently, it used to be that you had to have a shareholder who has 51% minimum requirement for UAE nationals. So you had to have a partner on paper saying that 51% is owned by a UAE national. And the free zones came in as an exemption to that, whereby foreign entities and foreign individuals can own 100%. In theory, anyone set up in the free zones should only work within the free zone itself. And anybody in mainland can service mainland and outside. In recent years, they've removed that requirement for the 51% local UAE shareholder, individual or corporation. So the distinction between both jurisdictions has become lesser defined, let's say. Another distinction is if you're dealing with government entities. They prefer you are a mainland, and more often than not will request and require it as a term in their tendering conditions that the company is a mainland registered entity instead of a foreign, instead of a free zone entity. So there are quite a few distinctions between them, but the most important one has been removed at the moment. So now it goes to, corporate tax, what sort of clients you're going to be dealing with, and where do those clients lie? Those are the important questions we would ask, and we'd help you determine which jurisdiction is the right one for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That was very helpful, because I believe that this really must have been a huge blocker for many clients to actually really go and set up an entity, and then obviously also the bank account. And I can imagine that was a no-go in many occasions. So if I understand correctly, like if I have a client who wants to operate there and he wants to be a sole owner of a company or a majority shareholder, that has to be in a free zone.
Used to be. Yeah, now they can open. Certain activities will require still the local shareholding, but those relate to telecommunications, oil and gas, and certain ones. But the rest of them has become fairly simple to do.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for being really brief. And I will make sure that you have enough space while answering some of the questions that I and mainly my clients have had when approaching me with the bank account opening requests. Now going to Ricardo from Desanchira, partner, German, Italian,
Yes.
and Asian. Ricardo, the stage is yours, and looking forward.
Thank you. Thanks. And first of all, thank you to our friends at EOS, and thank you to you, Bota, for organizing this. I'm honored to be here and represent the Asian bit, or let's say the more Southeast Asian bit of this debate or discussion, or pragmatic or practical discussion, as you guys call it. A few words to our firm, and then lastly, maybe a couple to the person talking to you. We are definitely an Asian-based and Asian-born and European-based firm that specializes in foreign direct investment support. So everything that clients need, from the setup or understanding the country or comparing the country, all the way to accounting, tax, HR, payroll, employer of record, intellectual property, we try to cover. We do this in 26 offices now in 11 countries in Asia. And one of those, actually 10 countries in Asia, and one of those countries outside of Asia will be in Germany. And we have liaison offices as well in Italy and the United States. So the firm is essentially European, as I said earlier, because it was founded in 1992 by two Europeans, and in Shanghai, in Singapore, and Hong Kong, and Shenzhen. But the office in Singapore is actually active since 2011, where we have a complete team of providers for a legal tax account. So we do get these questions very frequently, because Singapore is the Southeast Asian financial hub. So many companies set up their companies there to do business within Singapore and in the region. So it's paramount that we enable our clients that are coming from the Asian region or from outside the Asian region to assess whether they can open a bank account for individual purposes or for corporate purposes. A couple of words to myself. I've been in the firm for almost 12 years now. Moved back from China to Asia, to Europe, in 2020, and based mostly in Germany, although I keep moving in across the region to see our partners and clients and make sure that they understand more about Asia and take advantage of Asia mega region, which stretches from obviously Dubai to Mongolia, from Beijing to Jakarta. So very happy to be here. And if I have to tag along the discussion between Barbara and Ahmad on requirements for setting up a bank account for individual purposes or corporate purposes, there is also definitely a difference in Singapore related to this. The company bank account setup being the most complex one compared to the individual one, but definitely the individual can open a bank account, but it has to be older than 16 years of age, has to have a valid passport, but also has to reside in Singapore. And this is something that many times is not considered, because people just think that they can open a bank account in Singapore from outside. It's not at all possible. For companies, and we can go into greater detail later, they have to be registered in Singapore. They have to be registered with ACRA, which is the authority that authorizes the registration, or also let's say archives, and includes all the registrations of the companies in Singapore to do business. So it's the Accounting Corporate Regulatory Authority. Based on this principle, then you can continue obviously setting up the bank account by choosing the most appropriate one, but we'll see also in more detail what are the requirements of these banks? What is the criteria that you have to choose a bank? Should I choose a foreign bank in Singapore, or should I choose a local bank in Singapore? Or should I choose a big bank or an online digital bank, as they call them, with different advantages and drawbacks as well? So we can go into all those details later.
Amazing. But I would stay with you for a second, because what I expected is starting to happen as you're speaking, and other questions are popping in my mind, even those that we haven't been discussing before, which could make the discussion a little bit more interesting.
Okay.
But maybe, so like, can I ask you, why should I open a bank account or an entity and then bank account in Singapore or in other country of Asia? Because this might be really interesting.
Well, let's just, I'll start from one of my favorite issues, is that 1/3 of the world's economy is driven from Asia now, and it's going to be increasingly so. So from the Middle East to the Pacific coast of Asia, it's undoubtedly the place to be. If you're already there, the place to expand. So having a financial institution that represents your business and having a company, therefore, there is crucial for assessing whether you can still expand into Asia, or addressing local production issues and supply chain issues and moving your supply chain within Asia, and also to access markets that are usually require particular proximity to other Asian countries. So, and then lastly, to be in a hub environment, which is Singapore, that allows for extremely high international transactions and positive contaminations between cultures and very highly skilled people working in different environments, and an open market, which is essentially the ASEAN market, and also the very close connections within the supply chain frame with China mainland and the rest of Southeast Asia. So, and South Asia as well. So for me, working in this field for over 14, 15 years for Asia, it's a no-brainer, but I understand that it could be a big question mark on some people's head. Why should I be all the way in Singapore? It's also a good question, because it's not a mandatory thing. You can also wait and see, but definitely the answers you'll get from people doing business in Asia are all in favor of having a company there, not necessarily having one in Singapore first. So it's not a gateway necessarily to having, I don't know, a production line in India, or a supply chain in Vietnam and China. You can do that all with foreign direct investments in these countries without having a holding structure. The holding structure is good for you making use of the investments, or making investments of the revenue that you derive from doing business in Asia.
So Singapore would be your number one if someone would be deciding where to go, or?
Well, if I have to continue with this topic, sure. Look, you cannot produce in Singapore as you can produce in Vietnam or China or India, right? So there's not enough space. There's a low number of people available. It's 5.16 million people. You cannot produce anything that is not high value or low environmental impact. And then you have to go to other places. But it would be definitely my go-to place if you're looking for high-end production, research and development, and definitely a very, very high-intensity international market for business development and making things happen in terms of investment. If you have to just produce low technology, I would definitely look at other countries. Maybe Malaysia would be my first goal, because it's bordering basically with Singapore. And with the recent opening of the Johor economic zone in the south, you have access to a lot of land where you can still produce low technology goods, but having extreme proximity to Singapore within a few hours.
So if I try to find the key is not the country itself. It's not that in Singapore it would be somewhat faster, easier, somewhat better. It's rather about what business you're doing, what you're targeting, and then decide which country you want to go to. But from a certain point of view, Singapore is simply one of the more interesting countries to actually really set up, and maybe even the mother entity of the holding, etc. Okay, let's use this the question and as a bridge to Ahmad, and then go to the specific questions that we promised that we will be speaking about. Timing is perfect. We are nearing the half of the debate. It's running really quick as I expected. Ahmad, why should I have an entity and a bank account in Dubai, in other Emirates, in free zone? What is the main reason, main advantage? Why should I do that?
It really depends. So we've had clients that come in and say, we'd like to do business in Abu Dhabi. So our advice would be to set up in that jurisdiction, as in that emirate itself. If they're working with Dubai companies, then they would go to Dubai. So it really depends on the requirement of the client. There is an advantage between mainland and free zone, but there's no advantage between Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Ajman, or any of the other emirates as a mainland jurisdiction. The banking requirements are always going to remain the same. It always depends on the type of business they're going to be doing and who their target clients are. So the general rule of thumb is if you're going to be tendering and dealing with government entities, if you're going to be dealing with the Abu Dhabi government, then you're going to need to be set up in mainland Abu Dhabi. If it's a Dubai entity, Dubai government, then you'll need to be in Dubai. They see it as a preferential jurisdiction for them to deal with someone because they're under their purview. But other than that, it really depends on the business itself. So once we're engaged by clients, we at Crimson normally just go through a process of understanding what the client's business is, who their targets, who their clients, supply chain. Are they going to be doing business within the UAE, or are they just going to be kind of like a conduit between different jurisdictions and they are just based in the United Arab Emirates? So it really depends on the client himself. So every one of them is asked the questions, and then we determine which one is the most favorable one for their setup.
Okay, so one more from my side. If the client wants to go to the countries, for example, like Saudi or Oman or others, and like I would say from my and maybe generally European perspective, or like people potentially tend to feel a little bit more close, let's say, to Dubai or to UAE than to, for example, Saudi, etc. Can the company there and the bank account there serve as a kind of a gate for a client who really wants to then spread, then to the south or east or?
So, I mean, the general response to that is, and this is something found in the commercial companies law of pretty much every one of the countries within the Middle East, is that anyone conducting business within a country theoretically should have a license from that country. So, of course, in practice, that isn't normally the case. So if for example, you have an e-commerce website which sells products, whatever products it is, facial creams or some sort of beauty products, and you have a client who's requesting the delivery into Saudi. In theory, you shouldn't really be doing it that way. You should have a distributor or an agent within Saudi who has accounts there to receive the money. Now, for bigger companies who are, for example, contracting, performing construction or contracting, for those ones, we would always say it's better for you to be located within that jurisdiction. Again, who is your client base and who are you servicing? Some of them don't really mind. So we have clients, for example, who are still based in the UK, but providing services into the UAE. Again, in theory, they shouldn't be doing it. In practice, it does happen. Eventually, they will be asked to come in because if there is one complaint filed by one of the clients or the consumers, it becomes a problem for them later on down the line. So again, if they want to look into Saudi, I would say open up those accounts or the company within Saudi itself. You don't have to set up a manned office with 10, 20 people. It could be a remote satellite office which has the relevant activities to conduct the business within that region.
One more, again, it came to my mind. I was recently in Africa, in Kenya, Nairobi, and I was surprised that the law firms there, not just one, but multiple, had actually their branches, like not surprisingly in other African countries and states, but also very often they had a branch in the Emirates or Dubai or somewhere. it can actually the Emirates company or Dubai or whatever serve as a closer place to go from to the African countries? Are you familiar with this?
I'm not too familiar with the African side of things, but there is no restriction on UAE entities, whether free zone or mainland, in dealing with companies or individuals or clients in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. There's no restriction going outwards. There is a restriction coming inwards.
Understand.
But yeah, we have a lot of connections between here and Africa, and it's actually growing. I've been to a few events in the last couple of months on investment in Africa and the bilateral relations between the UAE and certain African countries. So
That's
it's definitely
why I'm
a place to.
It's really becoming a trend, and many clients are now interested in going to Africa. So exactly, I was kind of interested in knowing this. Okay, let's go to the questions planned because I think those are really the most interesting and important ones. How long does it take to set up a bank account in the Emirates, in the free zone, in Dubai, wherever? Feel free.
Okay, so again, I'll draw a quick distinction here between personal bank accounts and corporate bank accounts. For personal bank accounts, the key element in timelines is usually the nationality. Not the restriction, not that there's a restriction on nationality, but more often than not, some of the nationalities require a more in-depth analysis and an in-depth search from the government itself and the bank. So, for example, I'm from Jordan. I know for a fact that when I want to apply for it, it'll take 2 weeks. It's just the process takes a little bit longer because of the nationality. So, mostly for Europeans, it's a faster one, depending again which European country it is. But it depends on the nationality. But for personal ones, it usually it doesn't take very long. After you have the residency card and the Emirates ID, which is kind of like the identification card, it should take a week to 2 max. That's for a personal bank account. For the corporate account, again, it takes a little bit longer because they have to go through the nationality of the UBOs. They have to look at the company itself, the type of business it is. Some of the banks have actually asked for business plans. To Bara's point, they ask for business plans of the entities and what they're looking to accomplish, target audience or target clients. So the banking side for the corporate clients is usually 2 to 4 weeks, we say. And again, is it a free zone or is it mainland? Mainland is relatively quicker. Free zone, and depending which one it is, can be quick and can be extremely slow. We've had one client with a free zone outside of Dubai and Abu Dhabi that took about 6 months to open the corporate account. They're fairly better now. They're a lot quicker, but you know, how long is a piece of string? We don't really know, but we tell them it's between 2 to 4 weeks, and we try with our relationship managers at the banks to get it as fast as we possibly can.
That's actually another amazing hint. So like what you do is that you've got your managers that actually go with the client to the bank. I've even seen this attitude that law firms or advisory firms, they are actually giving even tips for which bank to go to, deciding based on I don't know what. Can you maybe tell us a little bit on that? Does it have something to do with the speed then in the end?
Yeah. So I'll go to Ricardo's point on this one. Local banks versus international banks, smaller banks versus bigger banks. So when you're dealing with the bigger banks here in the UAE, it's like a small cog in a big machine. They're fairly slow on the uptake, and they are a little more cumbersome to deal with. Some of the smaller banks and some of the virtual banks, for example, which are backed by conventional institutions, those ones have been relatively faster. I think the key point is which free zone or mainland entity you're going to be setting up with. Again, that plays a huge part in it. You've got Emirates NBD, which is one of the biggest ones here. That one, it takes a little bit longer if you are in a free zone, but they're quicker on the mainland entities. So it really depends, again, on how you're set up, nationality, the type of business. They have certain businesses which are considered high risk versus low risk. So e-commerce websites, they don't consider them high risk. But anything in construction is considered high risk. So fit out, construction, electromechanical, those ones are considered high risk at the moment. Those lists are dynamic, so they're constantly changing all the time.
Okay, brief summary, so that because there was a lot of information. So, Czech company wants to have a bank account somewhere in the Emirates. Ideally, where and ideally how, and then probably how long is it going to take for them, for a Czech entity, to have a bank account there?
So again, who is their target? Let's assume their target audience is going to be people living in Dubai.
Okay.
So with that setup, depending on the activity itself, let's assume it's marketing, for example. Marketing would be a low risk activity. Czech Republic is not deemed a high risk country. So you're looking at between the 2 and 4 weeks. This is the lower end result. Again, it depends if you have UBOs that are PIPs, person of political interest, then that increases the timeline. It's not a no, it just they require more documentation.
No, this is exactly what I wanted, like the practical example and what to expect, like a benchmark. Ricardo, can you talk about the timeline that you could present?
Sure. Well, if we're looking at the individual setting up and if all the requirements have been fulfilled, we're looking at maybe 2 or 3 different tiers. So online banking can take sometimes minutes if you do the digital banks, right? If you do the branch application, it can take from 1 to 4 weeks. Pardon me. It can take from 1 to 4 weeks, really depending on the choice of the bank, depending on the branch. But Singapore, you don't have an enormous number of branches to choose from the same bank, right? So you'll have that particular number of weeks to deal with as an individual. Again, if you fulfill all the requirements, if you're not a particular exposed person, etc. But for a corporate, time difference changes a lot. So you need to provide a lot of documentation, as we said earlier, right? So in terms of timing, and I can go into detail a bit later, we're looking at from 3 to 6 months. It really depends. Usually, I would stay more optimistic and look at 3 months. But as Ahmad said, what we're saying, once you pick up a stick, you're picking up both ends. So you have to be really ready on receiving also the more pessimistic outlook on timeline. But the requirements, as I said earlier, was hinting to before, you need a proof of company incorporation in Singapore. So first of all, you need to incorporate the company. And that takes a very short amount of time, a number of days, and sometimes just a couple of weeks. And then the bank will therefore want to see the certified true copy of the company's certificate incorporation, the completed corporate account opening forms, and then a certificate of true copy of the company's articles of association, and then also the board of directors resolution saying that we will want to open account with this and this signatory. And then banks may request supplier, vendor, client contracts, a list of the top vendors that the company has or wants to deal with, as well as countries that the jurisdictions the company will engage with, right? And then all the way down to the small details of who is going to work in the company, their professional background and their business plans. And then obviously the proof of residential address, and then the information, here we come, the information about the UBO, right? Yeah. But I can develop much more on the UBO and the KYC, obviously, those parts. But in terms of timing, that's what I
mean, maybe this is a good moment to maybe put 2 questions in one, because you actually, like, the timeline that you said, 3 months, it's really a lot. I mean, from a perspective of a businessman who wants to start operating, I should really plan in advance to really, before I go there. So does it actually help if the person, ideally the UBO or the director, or who of them or both, actually comes in person to the country and goes to the bank in person? Does it speed up the process?
There's no particular fast track if you come personally. There is a requirement if you look at the local banks, right, it will be OCBC, it will be DBS, Development Bank of Singapore, and the UOB. These three banks, two of these three banks of Singapore require you to be there presently, not to see if you're alive and fast track, because there's an increased risk of deep fake. And this is one of maybe the predominant reason why they require you to come in person. Because otherwise, in other circumstances, it could have been enough to send a passport copy, which do not need to be legalized and notarized for accounts in Singapore, but you have to go for reasons of deepfake. And then it's a bank-to-bank approach. You really have to talk to the branches and ask what the requirement is. But if two of the three local banks want you to come in person because of potential risk in deepfake, then I would follow that.
Okay, well,
and yes, it takes a long. I mean, it's a long time. I mean, 90 days. 90 days is a long time, right? But also the minimum range. It's 1 month. 30 days is not that much, in the end of the day. But it really depends on how fast you are in delivering the process. It depends on where you've set the first day of waiting. If you set it at the end of collecting and sending, or the first day you think about it, right? Because then obviously any country becomes tediously long. But if you have submitted everything correctly, and then you can start keeping track of time, you're looking at 30 to 90 days.
Yeah, but comparing it to the Czech Republic, where if I set up a company and I go to the bank the other day, and it's not, I don't know, from really exposed countries, I can really expect to have the bank account within days or maximum 1 or 2 weeks. There are obviously situations where it's more complicated. So from this perspective, it's really much faster. That's why I was a little bit, shocked or amazed by that. But summing it up, if I'm a company coming to there or opening a branch, it really will take me a few months, and it doesn't really help that much to come there in person in terms of time. It might actually even be required, but not with all of the banks. Some of the banks still accept that you provide with the document.
Yeah. Yes, and also to that, the KYC, which is the bigger part, the bulk of the weight, is required for every company, right? Whether the shareholder are corporate entities or they're natural persons. But the KYC is performed all the way, as you know, to the individuals, and there's an exemption. There's exemption occurs if the ultimate holding company is listed. And in this case, then there are, if you're listed, you have to have had disclosure already for other requirements for having been listed. So then you can get the exemption. And this would basically erode the 30 to 90 days waiting line for the KYC. And then you can really actually calculate the essential, the real time to set up the account without the KYC.
Amazing. Let me use this as a bridge to Bara, because we've got a very interesting use case there. Bara, can you speak about the timeline and actually the situation there in Oman related to presence and non-presence? Tell us the true story we're going through right now.
Yes, gladly. So the length of the process approximately is it's very similar to what Ahmad already said, around 2 or 3 weeks upon all the relevant documentation is submitted to the bank. This is probably the most, time-consuming part, to really, if you're sending the document to the bank remotely, really to fill in the forms properly, to provide all the necessary information, to go to the notary, make the notarization of the passport, then you need to get the apostille there. So you need to go to another, public authority, and then you can, send it to Oman. So to actually get ready, the documentation is the most time-consuming part. But as Ahmad and Ricardo said, it's always individual. You cannot really upfront set how long exactly it is going to take. It's always, it depends on who the person is, what the company business is. Again, if it's high risk, then it's gonna take a longer time, and it is also possible that the bank will ask, additional questions, will require additional documentation. So this is all very possible, and therefore, kind of impossible to say, really how long it takes. But if everything goes well, if the documentation is properly filled out, and the bank and the KYC of the business and the persons, goes well, then approximately is around 2 to 3
what
weeks.
I was trying to get
And-
to, but
and yes.
this was important. But how did we actually,
Yeah.
like proceed? Because
Yes.
we spoke about it. We started somewhere in February,
Yes, we established the company at the beginning of February.
and we're not there yet.
Yes, we're not there yet. But it's not really up on the side of the bank. The process was kind of complicated, but the process of establishment of the company was quite expensive for the client. So when then the partners in Oman told us that all the documentation will have to be filled out, signed, and then we're gonna have to go to the notary and get spend more money on notarization and apostille, etc., etc. Then the client decided that it would be better for him, as he was going to Oman anyway, that he will open the bank account when he's there. So and he should be going there like in May. So kind of
We will give an update.
Beginning from February to May, 3 months, but it's not on the side of the bank. It's just the amount of documentation and the additional cost that would arise in connection with the verification, etc. Was just kind of too much for the client. But he just thought it's gonna be better if when he's going there anyway, it's gonna be cheaper.
Understand. Well, let me then use this touch of the money, finally getting to that, and go to Ahmad. And Ahmad, can you please tell us, is there any or no? We agreed that Ricardo will start with the cost issue, right? I'm sorry, I failed as a moderator.
That's
here.
okay.
So okay, so
It's live. It's live.
Let's start with Ricardo as agreed. And please, can you tell us, like, roughly what the clients can expect as a cost related to the bank account setting up?
Okay, straight into the money. Well, look, after several happenings in the financial world years ago, right, with FATCA aggressively changing a bit the level playing field for Hong Kong and Singapore and other parts of the world. Some banks started to really feel a bit more uptight, and for other reasons also start to impose particular minimum deposits besides having to clear whether you're connected or not to specific nationalities or risk of an industry. Now, Singapore is the largest financial hub, as I said earlier, in Southeast Asia, right? It's the city-state that hosts 100 commercial banks. So, first of all, if you don't find your own bank from your country, and I checked, there's no check bank yet for the moment, your chances are you will find a large American, European, or even an Asian bank, right? Or you can resort to the 3 major local banks that I mentioned earlier, so OCBC, DBS, UOB. And you have to follow a specific criteria. And the criteria that you'll follow is connected to your own business. So can that bank offer financial services for my business requirements? Does the bank offer transaction in currencies that are relevant for me? Does the bank offer particular online banking services that are up to my standard and ease of use? And here we come then, if all of these boxes are ticked, here we come to the minimum initial deposit. Because then if you tick off all the previous boxes and then you realize that you cannot meet the large minimum initial deposit that huge banks in Singapore require, such as Citi or HSBC, then you have to change quickly. So, but focusing on small, medium enterprises, which I think are the backbone of the pool of clients that all of the firms here today discussing are, those that we support, we're looking at SME-friendly banks that are charging 30,000 Singapore dollars as a minimum initial deposit, and the conversion of 30,000 is around 20,000 euros, give and take. So this is the first slap that you get. We're talking about fees and costs, right? But there are also other options such as online banks, which are, I can name a couple. One is Air Wallets, and the other would be Aspire app, which may have much lower or no minimum deposits because they run on lower overheads because they have no banks, no physical presence, right? And they remain a valid alternative to larger banks. So what is the disadvantage of going with an online bank? It's not all rosy because some of them may have different or smaller ranges of financial services available to you. And some of them may only be available in particular currencies, sometimes only Singapore dollars and euro, sometimes only Singapore dollars and US. So you got to be careful with that. And there's another component in terms of fees. So you're going to be charged for not only the minimum deposit, but also the ATM withdrawals. You have to keep an eye on that. You would do that in your home country too, right? Whether and how much they charge for international transfer of anything, of fees, for international wire transfers. Early closure fees, which apply when the account is closed within 6 months of the opening. And if you have any other, if the banking institutions in Singapore will always charge like a small fee for registration and upkeep. And then last but not the least, it is connected, yes, to the bank, but also connected to the KYC. You have to think that the more structured, the more complicated your shareholder structure, that means more levels are in the structure, then the higher the charge. A rough estimate of how much a bank will charge per level in the structure is about 1,000 Singapore dollars, and that's 670 euros. So a suggestion right away there is to keep the shareholder structure lean if possible. So less structures, less complications in the structure, less levels, less charges.
Okay, well, that doesn't really sound like a cheap issue to have a bank account there. Mainly speaking about the big ones. Ahmad, how is it with the Emirates?
So again, similar somewhat to what Ricardo said. So it depends on the bank industry and the jurisdiction. So they don't have bank account opening fees as such, not that we have seen. Most of them will require minimum deposits. So you have to maintain a certain amount of currency within the accounts at all available times. Otherwise, they start charging either fees or penalties on it, depending on which banks. So again, it goes anywhere from, I think it was 25,000 dirhams was the lowest we've seen, which is around 5,000 euros, or give or take a little bit, up to we've seen 200,000 dirhams, which is about 40,000 euros. So it really depends on the bank. It will be a minimum deposit requirement for all the banks for corporate entities. It's just a matter of how much depending on the activity and where you are registered. Those are the two requirements. Some of the times they do request certain fees here, there, and everywhere. For example, if you are paying your employees within the UAE, you have to use something called the wage protection system, which every time you're paying, you pay certain fees as well on top of that. So, you have the main fees up top, and then you go into the more specific fees depending on the business and how it's conducted.
Okay. Bara, is there any cost that you could actually sum up as of now? What was connected? Maybe if you can, if you remember, and sorry to put you into this position, also including the company establishment and then the bank account connected costs.
Yeah. So the bank usually, or at least the bank that we were trying to open a bank account at, does not impose any fee in relation to open the bank account. So basically, and another fee that was not mentioned here is that when you decide to open establish a company in Oman and then open the bank account, then usually you will be working with some attorneys in Oman. So you have to take into consideration that you will have to pay the fees of the Omani attorneys, and I must say that their assistant is very, very helpful. And of course, it depends on the attorneys, but at least the attorneys that we have collaborated with, the communication was great. They really walked us through the process. Also now they will go with the client to the bank, so they can translate if necessary, etc., etc. So
would you actually recommend to go without the local Omani lawyers, or is it no go?
For me, it is no go, but I also see it from the Czech perspective, because I know that when we help the clients to open a bank account in Czech Republic, then I would recommend to go there with the client as well. Firstly, it's still persons working at the bank. At least the experience of mine is that their English is not perfect. So sometimes, they ask questions which are hard for them to translate. So it's definitely better to be there, at least for the language perspective. But also they can ask some questions about the business. And if it's some kind of high risk business, it's good to be prepared for the questions. So I would, and I suppose in Oman it would be the same. So I would definitely recommend to go there with Omani partners, Omani attorneys.
In total, can we just, we are approaching the end. So sum up, are we in thousands of euros or dozens of thousands of euros in total for the setting up and the, like the cost related to the bank account setup, etc.?
Yeah, again, it will depend on the attorney's fees. I'm not sure if I remember correctly. It's around $1,000, maybe more, something like that.
Related to the bank account, or
related to the bank account, yes. Okay. But also one has to remember that there will be fees if one decides to open the bank account remotely, for the notarization, for the apostille, etc. So but these fees better not be too high. So the biggest fees will be for the attorney services.
Okay. Great. So I really don't want to make the discussion longer than this 1 hour, and I'm really proud that we made it so nicely within the time frame. So the final round of goodbye and maybe something to the end. I would start with Ricardo, and maybe if you can, as a last sentence, say, do you think it's even possible, or would you advise to actually use an advisor, or like to go alone to try and set up a bank account in Singapore or other Asian jurisdiction? Like, is it worth the value? And then the same with Ahmad, please, and with Bara, we already said that.
I'm a big believer in DIY, but for many other things than this.
Okay.
There's a reason why there are advisors out there. The reasons are obviously to make clients happy, but most importantly, the people who are out there or have educated themselves there or have accumulated decades of work there are doing it because there is also a very strong commitment and passion to that area of the world. And I would not really go and do things by myself, especially when they're so critical to bank accounts. Also because now there's an increasing interconnectivity between governments and banks. And the higher the number of mistakes or mishaps that you allow the local governments or local banking system to record will fire back. And you don't want to be blacklisted, or you don't want to be, flagged at any level in the business today. So you should definitely use the wise advisory of people who are in multidisciplinary firms, such as the ones that are partaking today and mine. So legal, tax, and accounting people who know what they're doing, because it's just worth it. Don't go and commit costly mistakes by yourself and then come back to your home country with your fingers burnt and saying that that country doesn't work because you just didn't follow the right rules and went by yourself. You may get lucky once or twice, but I would say, where's the value in risking it, right?
Amazing. Ahmad, what would you suggest?
So I have an Arabic proverb for you, which says basically that give the bread to the baker. So allow the people who are specialized, to Ricardo's point, allow the people who are specialized in what they do to do it, because it's faster, more efficient. It doesn't cost less. It doesn't cost in terms of financially less upfront, but to Ricardo's point again, if you do the mistake of, providing the wrong document, entering the wrong information, then you would find out very quickly that it's going to take you far longer. So yes, we do suggest either with advisors as in legal, or you have people who are called corporate service providers. So these are the ones who are setting up companies. They do just as well of a job as we do, but do definitely engage someone that will assist you in opening up those bank accounts.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the discussion. It was as great as I thought it will be. It was really practical. We really made it within the hour. I think we've said everything I wanted to be said. If there's any question by anyone watching the live debate today, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we will be more than happy to help. We will, as I said, process this debate into an article and probably also some straight part of the video so that we can share the content. I think, and I find it extremely valuable, also from my own experience and the needs of my clients. So thank you, Bara. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Ricardo, for your time, for your great experience that you shared with us, and looking forward to another discussion very soon on some other very interesting topic. Have a nice day.
Same to you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.